Lesson 33, comparing and rounding decimals. So at the very end of a decimal number, if you have a whole bunch of zeros and no other digit past the zeros, those are called terminal zeros. Sometimes they're called extraneous zeros. So we're just going to put here terminal zeros and maybe in parentheses extraneous. Extraneous just means extra zeros. So they're the zeros at the end of a decimal number. So if we had the decimal number 3 and 4,000 10,000ths, there are 3 terminal zeros. So this number has 3. Do you see them? They're right at the very end. So 3 terminal zeros. Now, whenever we are comparing decimal numbers, there's 3 steps. So the first one is to line up the decimals. The second one is to add zeros at the end if needed. And I'll do an example so you can see what it means if it's needed, if you have to have those terminal zeros. And then 3 is you compare place values. So we're going to an example where we have decimal numbers that we want to put in order. Or compare. So the very first step is just line up the decimals. So we're just going to list the numbers one on top of the other with the decimal lined up. So this means add zeros if needed, is you would fill in 2 terminal zeros on the first 2 numbers so that it goes out to the same number of places as the other ones. Then we compare place values. That means just look at the tenths place first, and we compare those. So right here, the first one is going to be the largest number. The second number will be the next largest. And then these 2 will be the smaller ones. So then we look at the hundredths place. And they're the same, so we have to go to the thousandths place. And the very bottom one will be the next to smallest, because it's bigger than the smallest. Or before the, I don't know how you say. Next one before the smallest, second to last. Yes, that's actually better. And then this one will be the smallest number. I would like to do one more example of this one where we compare numbers. And we're going to do a whole bunch of numbers here, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers. So we follow the 3 steps, and the first one was to line up the decimals. So just make sure that they're all lined up. And then we're going to put in all of the terminal zeros that we need so that we can have 4 place values, because this last number has 4. So we have to add in the 0 so we can compare. Okay. So that's adding zeros at the end, and then 3, we're going to compare the place values. So we start with the very first place value, which is the 1's place. Since 1 is bigger than all these zeros, then this will be the first number, which means, in this case, the largest. Then we look at the 10ths place, and we have 3 numbers that have a 10th place. This one we've already used. So this will be number 2 in the order. This one will be number 3. Then we look in the 100th place, and the 3 that are left have a 3 in the 100th place. So then we go to the 1000th place. These 2 have a 2, and this is a 0, so that's going to be the smallest. And then we look at the 1000th place of these 2. This one's bigger. So that's going to be number 4, and this one will be number 5. So you can put them in order by just comparing the place values. The next part of the lesson is going over rounding decimals. And we round decimals very similar to how we round whole numbers. So in whole numbers, like we did the other day, when you round the place where you are, all the rest of the numbers go to 0. In decimal numbers, if you are rounding a decimal place, all the rest go to 0, and then you drop them off because they're terminal zeros and you don't have to write them. So let's do an example where we round 5 and 36,827 hundred thousandths. We're going to round that to the nearest hundredth. So we go over to the 100th spot, which is the second one over. We underline it. So the number 6. So this 6, so all the numbers before it are going to stay the same. The 6 is either going to stay the same or go up 1. You have to look at the 8. Since that's more than 5, we're going to change the 6 to a 7. So we rewrite the 5, the decimal point, the 3. We change our 6 to 7. And then we just drop off the rest of the numbers. Because they're going to go to 0, we don't need those numbers in a decimal number. And we're going to do one more example where we round the same number to the nearest thousandth. Nearest thousandth. Wait, I guess I don't need an S right there. So thousandth place is the third one over, so I underline the 8. So all the numbers before the 8 stays the same. 8's going to either stay the same or go to 9. So we look at the 2, it's less than 5, so the 8 stays the same. So we write all the numbers before it, and we write 8, and the other ones get dropped off. So the only difference really between these and whole numbers is after you do the rounding, in decimal numbers you drop off the rest, and in whole numbers they change to 0. So that's the lesson for today.